Welcome to the Wisdom Path, a space where timeless lessons meet everyday struggles. If you've ever felt stuck, like you're always waiting for a better moment to start, this story is for you. Today, we'll explore a quiet truth about procrastination, what hides beneath it, and how one simple mindset shift can unlock real movement in your life. Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and join this growing community of thoughtful seekers. Your presence here matters. Let's begin the journey. Part 1. The Empty Cup and the Clock That Never Strikes Now. Imagine you're holding a ceramic cup. It's beautiful, but empty. Every dream you have, every goal you imagine, is like tea meant to fill this cup. But there's a problem. You keep saying you'll pour it later. You wait for the perfect temperature, the perfect tea, the perfect time. But that moment never quite arrives. This is the trap of someday. Let me tell you a story. The old clockmaker. In a quiet village nestled in the hills, there lived an old clockmaker named Eli. He was known for crafting the most intricate timepieces, watches, clocks, even sundials. His shop was always filled with the gentle tick-tock of 100 devices. But there was one clock Eli never finished. He called it the moment. It sat on his desk for decades, half-built. Whenever someone asked about it, Eli would smile and say, "It's not the right time yet." Years passed. His hands grew slower. His eyesight dimmed. One morning, a young boy named Noah, who often helped sweep the shop, asked, "Eli, why don't you just finish it? What are you waiting for?" Eli looked at the unfinished clock, sighed, and said something that stayed with Noah for the rest of his life. "I kept waiting for the moment. I never realized the moment was waiting for me." We do this too, don't we? We say we'll start writing the book, launching the project, having the important conversation later. But as Tony Robbins once said, the path to success is to take massive, determined action. And yet, that massive action often begins with one tiny, imperfect step. Why do we wait? Psychologists say that procrastination isn't laziness, it's often fear. Fear of not being good enough, fear of failure, or sometimes, fear of success. Starting means change, and even good change can feel scary. But here's something you might not have thought of. Procrastination is often a form of self-protection. It's like your mind is putting up an umbrella, just in case it might rain, even on a sunny day. But what if, instead of hiding under the umbrella, you stepped out and felt the sun? Lesson 1. Movement creates momentum. Think of a stone at the top of a hill. It's hard to push at first, heavy, awkward. But once it starts rolling, gravity helps. Movement creates momentum. The same goes for you. Have you ever noticed that starting a task often takes more energy than finishing it? The first 5 minutes at the gym, the first sentence of the email, the first step onto a stage, that's the resistance point. But it doesn't mean you're weak, it means you're human. Start by doing the smallest possible version of what you're avoiding. Want to write a book? Open a blank document and write one sentence. Need to make a phone call? Dial the number, even if your hands shake. Want to get healthier? Put on your walking shoes. That's it, start small. Lesson 2. Stop waiting for motivation. There's a common myth that you need to feel motivated before you act. But it's usually the other way around. Action creates motivation. You move, then you feel better. You act, then you feel inspired. This is what the Zen masters understood deeply. They would sweep the floor, carry water, chop wood, not to finish a task, but to be fully present in the doing. In fact, Brian Tracy once said, "You cannot escape the responsibility of tomorrow by evading it today." Motivation, then, is a result, not a prerequisite. Metaphor: the garden that waited too long. Imagine you have a garden. You bought seeds. You planned it out. But every day you say, "Tomorrow I'll plant them." Days turn into weeks. Seasons change. And when you finally return to the soil, it's hardened. The rain has passed. The moment is gone. You missed your season. Procrastination is how we miss the garden of our own lives. A gentle practice for today. Let's do something small together. Right after this video, pick one thing you've been avoiding. Set a timer for just 5 minutes. Start. Not to finish it, not to master it, just to break the stillness, like tapping on ice to find where it cracks. You are not broken. If you struggle with procrastination, don't shame yourself. You're not broken. You're not lazy. You're likely overwhelmed, afraid, or lacking clarity. Treat yourself with the same kindness you'd give a friend. Sit with the feeling, name it, and then move, just a little. Remember, even a river starts as a drop. Thank you for walking with us today on the Wisdom Path. If this message spoke to you, please hit the subscribe button and join our journey. In the next part, we'll explore how to build inner strength through responsibility and purpose. Until then, take one small action. Not because you have to, but because the moment has been waiting for you. Part 2. The Weight of the Keys, Taking Back Control of Your Life. Welcome back to the Wisdom Path. If you're new here, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you won't miss any of our weekly stories and insights. In Part 1, we explored how procrastination isn't a flaw. It's a signal, a gentle nudge from life, telling us to move before we're ready. Today, we go deeper. We talk about responsibility, but not in the heavy, stressful way most of us hear that word. We'll look at it as empowerment, as the moment you realize you're holding the keys to your own life. The story of the locked door. Once, in a quiet city, lived a man named Thomas. For years, he walked past the same old wooden door near his apartment. It was tall, covered in vines, and always locked. Behind it was said to be a beautiful garden, one that could only be entered by someone holding the original key. Thomas asked around, "Who has the key?" "Not me," said the shopkeeper. "Maybe the mayor." The mayor said, "I think the architect lost it." The architect said, "I gave it to the city guard years ago." Thomas kept waiting for someone to open the door. Then one day, while walking home in the rain, something in him snapped. He turned, marched up to the door, and to his surprise, it clicked open. He had the key in his pocket all along. He just never tried using it. This is how many of us live. We wait for someone to give us permission, to tell us it's time, to fix things for us. We forget the truth. You already have the key. What is personal responsibility? Personal responsibility doesn't mean blaming yourself. It means claiming your power. It means saying, "Yes, this is hard, but I can respond. I may not control everything, but I do control what I choose next. This is my life. No one else is going to live it for me." You're the author of your story. If you hand the pen to someone else, your boss, your fears, your past, you lose your voice. Metaphor: the captain and the storm. Think of your life like a boat. The waves may be rough. The sky may grow dark. But you're still the captain. You might not control the weather, but you steer the ship. Responsibility is that steering wheel. Why we avoid responsibility? Sometimes we avoid responsibility because it feels like pressure. But what if it's actually freedom? If you're responsible for your growth, then you're also free to change, free to try again, free to move forward even after you've fallen. Remember, responsibility is not a burden, it's a bridge between where you are and where you want to be. Small decisions shape big lives. Let's go back to something simple. You don't need to change your whole life today. But maybe you can take a look at one area. Ask yourself, where in my life am I waiting for someone to rescue me? What choices am I avoiding? What am I secretly hoping will just fix itself? Write them down. Now choose one. Just one. Ask, what's one small action I can take today to move this forward? Example, the story of Lara. Lara was a young designer, talented but stuck. She hated her job but stayed, telling herself, next year I'll leave. Years passed, stress grew, confidence faded. One day, during a coffee break, she heard a colleague say, "No one is coming to save you. Your peace is your job." Something inside her shifted. She went home and wrote down all the things she could control. Update her portfolio. Learn one new tool a week. Apply to one job every weekend. She didn't quit right away. But step by step, her actions changed her story. 6 months later, she was in a new job, one that excited her. Lesson 3. The power of ownership. Ownership means you stop blaming and start building. It means you don't say, "They made me feel this way." You say, "I chose how to respond." You don't say, "I don't have time." You say, "I didn't make time." It's not about guilt, it's about honesty. When you take ownership of your schedule, your mindset, your choices, something powerful happens. You start trusting yourself, and that trust, that's how you rebuild your confidence. Reflection. What are you choosing today? Every day, you're choosing something. Even not choosing is a choice. Let that sink in. You're either choosing growth or staying still. You're either choosing courage or avoiding discomfort. You're either choosing action or postponement. Today, choose one thing that honors your future self. Gentle practice for part 2. Tonight, before you sleep, ask yourself, what am I responsible for that I've been avoiding? Then, write it down, not to judge yourself, but to bring it into the light. Awareness is the first act of leadership. You are the author. Let's go back to the story of Thomas and the locked door. He thought he needed permission. He thought someone else had the power. But once he acted, the truth was clear. The moment was always his. You're more capable than you think. You're more powerful than you feel. And you're not alone on this journey. If this message resonates, subscribe to The Wisdom Path. In part 3, we'll talk about letting go of perfectionism and how imperfect action is the secret to momentum. Until then, remember, you hold the keys, use them. Part 3, the fear of not enough. Why imperfection is the way forward. Welcome back to The Wisdom Path. If you followed this series so far, you already know. Procrastination isn't just about laziness. It's about fear, confusion, and sometimes it's about the desire to get everything just right. In this final part, we explore the sneaky trap of perfectionism. We'll learn why it paralyzes you, how to let go of it, and why doing something poorly is still better than doing nothing at all. If this speaks to you, hit the subscribe button and share this video with someone you care about. Now let's begin. The myth of the perfect moment. There's a quote that says, "You don't have to be great to start, but you have to start to be great." Let that sink in. Most people never start because they're waiting for the right time, the perfect version, the ideal mindset. But life doesn't reward perfection. It rewards movement. Story, the painter and the blank wall. There was once a painter named Leo who dreamed of creating a masterpiece. He found the perfect wall in his garden, bought the best paints, studied every brushstroke technique, but he couldn't bring himself to begin. What if it's not good enough? He asked himself. What if I ruin it? So he left the wall blank. Days turned into weeks, seasons passed, and the once pristine wall began to crack, weathered by sun and rain. Eventually, Leo stood in front of it and sighed. I was so afraid to ruin it. I forgot what it meant to create. Then, with a single stroke, he began. Not because he was ready, but because he was tired of waiting. Perfectionism is the fear of being seen starting small. But everything big once began as something small and probably messy. The real danger of perfectionism. Let's be honest. Perfectionism feels productive. We say we're just planning or getting ready. We spend hours researching, organizing, tweaking. But what are we really doing? Avoiding the discomfort of starting. The truth is, perfectionism doesn't lead to better results. It leads to no results. Metaphor: planting in the rain. Imagine you want to grow a tree. You wait for the perfect weather. But one day it's too cold, the next too windy, then it's cloudy. Years go by, and there's still no tree. But the person who planted during light rain, they now sit in the shade of a growing forest. The lesson? Start with what you have, where you are, even if it's raining. Lesson 4. Action builds confidence, not the other way around. A lot of people think confidence is something you get before you act. But it's the opposite. Confidence comes from showing up, even when you're uncertain. Think about the first time you learned to ride a bike. You were shaky, maybe scared. You fell a few times, but you didn't wait until you were confident. You got confident because you kept going. It's the same with work. Article relationships, health, growth. You can't wait until you're fearless. You move despite the fear. Real life example, Jordan and the podcast. Jordan had a dream to start a podcast. He bought a microphone, wrote episode ideas, practiced talking into his phone, but he kept delaying the launch. Maybe I need a better intro. My voice sounds weird. What if no one listens? One day his friend told him, "You're not trying to be perfect. You're trying to be bulletproof." That hit deep. Jordan uploaded his first episode. It was raw, imperfect, and real, and people loved it, not despite the imperfections, but because of them. Lesson 5. Progress over perfection. Instead of asking, "Is this good enough?" ask, "Is this a step forward?" That's the only question that matters. You don't need to write the whole book, just one page. You don't need to fix everything, just one piece. You don't need the final answer, just the next step. Perfection is a mountain. Progress is a path, one you can actually walk. Practice. The 80% rule. Try this today. Whatever task you're avoiding, aim to do it at 80% effort. Not 100, not perfect, just good enough to move forward. Why? Because the 80% version gets done. The 100% version gets delayed. Think of it like this. A delivered email that's pretty good is better than the perfect email still sitting in drafts. What if you fail? Here's a gentle truth. You will fail sometimes. You'll mess up. You'll say the wrong thing. You'll take the wrong turn. But so what? Failure isn't the opposite of success. It's part of the process. The only real failure is never starting. Let it be ugly. First, every beautiful building began as a dusty blueprint. Every best-selling book started as a rough draft. Every wise teacher once fumbled their words. Let it be ugly. Let it be awkward. Let it be incomplete. But let it begin. That's where transformation lives. You're already enough. You don't need to become perfect to begin. You don't need to wait until you're smarter, stronger, or more inspired. You're already enough to take the next step. Remember, start where you are. Use what you have. Do what you can. Arthur Ashe. Final reflection. The wisdom of the path. As we close this journey together, remember, Part 1 taught us that action breaks procrastination. Part 2 reminded us that ownership gives you power. Part 3 showed us that progress beats perfection. This isn't about fixing yourself. It's about remembering who you already are, a capable, creative, resilient human being. You don't need permission. You don't need to wait. You just need to begin with what you have, from where you are, right now. Thank you for walking this path with us. If this series has touched you in any way, please subscribe to the Wisdom Path, leave a comment, or share it with someone who needs to hear it. Together, we can build a community of thoughtful action takers, imperfect but unstoppable. And always remember, the path isn't somewhere far away. It begins beneath your feet.